for posterity, and that way we can, if somebody's missing it, they can catch up at some point. Okay, let us begin. Everybody okay? All right. So a couple of ground rules for the online class here. Big time forgiveness, everybody, if you are need to interrupt me or say something or whatever else. Don't be shy to just shout out, because it's I can't see you, so if you're trying to raise a hand to ask a question, I won't be able to see you. So just feel free to interrupt during specific parts. I'm going to try and go through some things. I'll mute everybody so that nothing's distracted. And then I'll unmute everybody after like 5 or 10 minutes, so you can ask questions. You can also type into the chat and I'll see it. I'll keep it open on the side here. And yeah, unfortunately, the biggest part of my class is the discussion. And that's the biggest part that we're going to miss out on during this part. Because I don't think you can pair off and do groups and stuff like that, right? Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah, so I'm just going to mute everybody and start talking. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. All right, let's begin. Tonight we're talking about scribing. Oh wait, I'm going to mute everybody. Yeah. Okay, tonight we're talking about scribing. We're not doing there's going to be discrepancies on this slideshow. I didn't adapt it for tonight. But so part of tonight's homework, and I'll share this all at the end, will be to, and I think you had to do this anyway, comment on each other's blog posts. So you'll have to this week comment on Student as Tutorial Designer blog post. Just making a note of that for myself. Okay, let's just get into scribing. If I could figure out how to work this. Okay. No. Okay. Now, Alan November's ideas about scribing are somewhat limited, I think. You've all read the chapter, and I'm just going to summarize it. Ordinarily, we'd have a chance to discuss it a little bit more, but his ideas are somewhat limited to having one class scribe who takes notes for the class and then shares those with the rest of the class. It gets into the 3 things of motivation, that is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. The child is free to take their own notes. Autonomy, mastery, they can go back to them, fill them in, talk with a class researcher about correcting them. And there's purpose. The other students are really using those to help them understand the class material. That, I think, is a somewhat limited view, but it's a good basis. So I want to broaden scribing to how we manage and collect information for our specific class purposes. So let's say you have a class pet. How do you go out, collect information, and keep track of it, and adapt it into a useful form for your class? So it's we're doing this all the time. Your growth plan is essentially a type of scribing, where we're taking written information, writing it down in a way that's going to be helpful to us in the future. It's like a receipt for a donut or something. Like, it's very simple, or a receipt for something that you bought. It's very simple. You're just keeping track of things. It's like a log, or it could be a journal, more broadly, but something by which you are keeping track of things and then going back, and it's somehow useful to go back and see that information. So let's keep going. Notes are useful, and there is some aspect to that if you're taking notes, then you end up learning more. There's some research about that, where you learn more if you take notes. And so that has to be brought into consideration as well. And I know that at the younger grades, you're trying to teach students to develop the hand-eye coordination and the fine motor skills to write. So I wouldn't necessarily say that you would want only one kid taking the notes for your class. So essentially, the major question is, how does scribing change the relationship of the student to the knowledge? And I think the major shift for scribing is that you can share your particular notes with anybody, and that they sort of live forever. And you can hyperlink them to other stuff. So like if you're taking notes on how to take care of the class pet, like a chicken, baby chicken, a chick, you can hyperlink your notes into National Geographic's information about chickens. I don't know if they have information about chickens, but you know what I mean. Yeah, like some sort of farmer's almanac. Okay. So some of the ideas behind this are Digo, Feedly, RSS feeders, and I'm just going to share with you a few ideas of what other people have done, and encourage you that when you're doing your weekly app practical for this, to go back and look at what other people have done in their what do you call it, blogs. All right, so let's just take a look. I'm not going to have you do any independent work during this. You can save that all for the end. Here are some that other people have found. So scribing is essentially for reflection, for collecting resources, and for sharing that with other people in a meaningful way. This leads very easily into the student as tutorial designer. So say you have students somehow collating information for themselves. So like you can have students make their own routine charts or classroom job charts, right? In some way they're taking information and adapting it for themselves and putting it into a framework for themselves. Here's some ways that you can do that. Notability, Penzu, Day One journaling app. It's got a lot of extras to it, like it reminds you to take notes. And let's take a look at the next one. Zoho Notebook works best on an Apple. Paper, that's an iPad thing. You can draw anything. It's got stencils. Seesaw and Schoology, they're more complicated, sort of do it all together apps, but they have a component to them that is note-taking based. You can also look for note-taking stuff by going to things like this that sort of collect apps. All right, we're not doing that. Not doing that. Okay. So please, I'm going to unmute everybody. And if you have a question, you can say it aloud or type it into the chat. Essentially, we just did an entire scribing class. Basically, at this point, I'm hoping that you understand the scribing idea from your reading and from this brief sort of, what do you call it? Just broadening the topic. And if you have any questions about that, ask now. Otherwise, that's it. You can take that and just go do and find how you're going to incorporate the idea of students taking their own notes somehow in your classroom. Okay, everybody's unmuted. Questions? Yes, the weekly practical assignment is on scribing, and a picture or scribble is perfectly fine. So one of the ways that people have done this in the past is they'll just take a picture of student work and make a portfolio. So that's a really powerful and easy way of doing scribing in the future classroom. Students can take pictures throughout the year of their work, and at the end of the year, or at various points in the year, they can just view them and see how far they've come. You can do assignments that are like pick one of your old pieces of work and redo it. Redo it in a way that you would now that you know better. It's also a great way of sharing work with parents, or even just grading or looking at how students, or assessing how students have changed over time. But it needn't be complicated. Scribing is actually quite a simple one in terms of what technology you're using. What's interesting is how you're going to integrate it into your classroom. It could be in one assignment. It could be just like, okay, for this assignment, students are going to they're going to read this book and take notes on it and share it with the rest of the class. Or it could be something that you, like a routine that you continually do in your classroom. Like every time there's an assignment, one of the students' jobs is to take a picture of it and put it on the class website. I know that many of you are working with kindergartens or younger, so this may primarily be something that you use, not the student.
You're okay.
I find Moto only writing skills portfolio app is okay for this. Yeah, anything that has to do with saving or collecting information, and then making it useful for future use, like going back and using it again. You should be able to navigate yourself through the slideshow if you open it in another window for yourself and look at some of those. I really highly recommend going back to the other example blogs, and particularly maybe looking at the Montessori ones or the kindergarten ones, and seeing what they're doing. Yeah, I see you, buddy. Okay. Hopefully I've given you enough time to look at that. Actually, you know what? Maybe this is a good idea, just to give you, is this something we are doing now? Oh, well, I was gonna offer that to you, that maybe the best thing is to just give you 5 minutes to look around and sit with the idea and try and make sure that you don't have any questions, because because otherwise I'm afraid that during the week you'll be like, okay, I'll do this on next Monday or Tuesday, and you'll run into some questions right away that I could clear up for you really easily. So I think actually, I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it. Why don't you take 5 to 7 minutes right now and just look at an old blog or try and find a new blog of somebody who has used scribing in the classroom. Just take 5 to 10. I'll stop you at 7 minutes. See how far you get with this assignment, and if there's no questions, we'll move on to student as researcher. Okay, I'm setting a timer. 7 minutes. Okay, go. All right, I typed the assignment into the chat. Basically, look for a scribing app or website. But if you can't find one or your students are too little to use technology, think about how to integrate the concept of student journaling or log keeping into your classroom. What things could you log over time? What things could the students journal about, either in little tiny videos or just logging student work over time? It's very helpful for seeing how students change over time, particularly if you have to prove that they've changed over time. Right? There's storybooks. What do you mean by that? So I'm going to unmute you so you can talk.
They illustrate their own stories and they tell their stories to the class. And every 2 weeks we change their books, but they go back to their books and they have time to edit, revise, and add more details to their stories and share all that with their friends.
Yes, that is a great example of student scribing.
Okay.
At the young level.
As they progress, I ask them to write words with their pictures and start with letters, initial sounds, and then gradually make up the words, labeling their pictures.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
That would be my app for a weekly app for next week.
Yeah. So
Okay.
just take a couple pictures of that, or make an example one and take a couple of pictures, and bring that to, put that onto your blog.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great idea. Of course, I forgot to check the time. of a minute. Yeah, the storyboard one is a great one. Emily, Seesaw is a great way of doing that. Can I share my screen with you? Check out seesaw.me, or go to YouTube and search for like Seesaw tutorial. It's a great app for that. I really appreciate everyone being troopers with the whole online class thing. Yeah, she emailed me. Mercedes did. Oh no, poor Michelle. I don't know how to help her. I feel very helpless. I'm helpless right now. Oh, Mercedes, I hope everything's okay. I see that you say you just got home. I hope everything went well. Can I like the lol Emily comment? Like, Angersol, who wasn't getting my emails? I can unmute you. Nope, you don't have a microphone. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. That sounds awful. You do what you need to do. I'm recording this, Mercedes. And also, I will say this right now. We're gonna briefly go over all this stuff again in the next class and clear up any misconceptions. So do the best you can with this, and I believe you'll be able to get most of it. But don't worry too much about getting the work 100% complete or 100% perfect or anything like that. We'll clear everything up. I know this is difficult for everyone. Okay, let's continue on with student as research. Okay, so this is, again, these slides may or may not make sense to what we're doing today, just because I didn't have a chance to edit them for an online version of the class. So, but there are helpful links here, and you can log in. I mean, you can get this slideshow by going to the class blog and clicking on class slideshow. Okay, let us continue on to students as researchers. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So this is one of the biggest changes that students are going through in terms of the difference between the industrial age and the computer age. Things change so quickly in the last 20, 30 years that the teachers, most teachers that are in their 20s or 30s, didn't have this type of technology when they were a kid. Is that true? No, those are the ones that had it as a kid. Anyone over 30 may have not had this as a kid. So this is a new way of thinking about the world. So Alan November's key points are web literacy. And just to clarify this point a little bit, web literacy meaning, yeah, students know how to operate a Chromebook or set the time on the VCR or operate their iPhone or their Android phone. They know how to fool around with technology and like turn the screen upside down or make programs talk to each other that you didn't know how to do or quickly share things. But they may not have the prefrontal cortex ability to understand how to do sort of the architecture of operating electronic tools. So one way of thinking about it is yeah, the kids might be really good at picking up a hammer and using a hammer or a screwdriver or a saw, but they can't put together a house just because they know how to use the individual tools really easily, maybe even better than you. They don't have a good idea about how to build a house, where to put it, what parts need to be done before other parts, etc. So what we're talking about with web literacy is how to do that higher level thinking with the higher level thinking on the web. Validity of research, that is vetting the information. There's a lot of information out there, but some of it is misleading, and you can find opinion pieces on any topic, like Bigfoot. Say there's sites out there that are dedicated to a flat Earth, right? About the information about there being a flat Earth. So we need to teach students how to determine what information is valid and useful and what information is not. Lastly, the right questions. So a student may ask, why can't we go to Mars? And there are a lot of answers to that question. And if they're trying to figure out the main problem, they're going to have to ask question after question that's going to lead them around to an answer. So in other words, you don't necessarily start with the same question that you end with. So how do you ask leading or questions that lead you on a journey towards an actionable answer? So these are the three main points that November talks about and what we will sort of be focusing on. Web literacy, how do you operate the machinery of the web? Vetting information, what's good information, what's bad information, good and bad information, and the right questions. How do you design lessons to lead students to finding an answer? A couple of other things that we'll bump into today are citations, and what does that have to do with your average class, and plagiarism, what is and isn't allowed in the digital age. So I'm just going to go on a hopefully about a 5-minute talk about research, and I'm going to ask you to think differently about research than you may have be thinking already. So I'm going to start with the idea that we have different theories of knowledge. And a theory of knowledge is the understanding of how we know something to be true. So in science, there's the theory of gravity. And we know this to be true because so many people have observed it, measured it, and they've come to a consensus based on an observation of the physical world. In the humanities, we decide what's true based on people reading a lot of books and then coming to similar ideas about what's going on, or reading a lot of newspapers and deciding, oh, what's important? What's going on that's important in the world right now? And so there's two different parts. There's this physical world, then there's humanities, and then there's the way that you know things in terms of your own personal life. You know how to get to the store, you know that somebody, your husband or your wife or your children love you, or your friends like you, right? These things are not scientific, and they're not by a consensus of professors at a school or something. But they are nonetheless valid ways of knowing a fact. All right, so in terms of research, what this has to do with research is that there's an old, oh, poor Molly, she's missing the best 20-minute lecture on research. I'm just gonna have to send her the video afterwards. I apologize. So in the old way limit is that you've got to look in the printed encyclopedia, and if it's not in there, then it's a bad source. So if it's not from Encyclopedia Britannica, it's not true. There's only one place to get knowledge, and if it's not from that one place, then it's a bad. Then there's also limits that students are putting on themselves, and that is like, if you can't type the question verbatim into Google and have the answer pop up as the first or second link, that information doesn't exist. And we know that's not true either, that there are some problems that are complicated, and there are some that are nuanced as well. So we're going to try and break free of both of those wrong answers to what research is. The fact is that we are doing research all the time. We are looking for information that allows us to take action or persuade others. It's funny that students sort of know this automatically. There's no such thing as a good source or a bad source. And we create our own information out of bits of other pieces of information. So for instance, if I used to use this example with my class. We're sitting in class, and all of a sudden an 8th grader runs in to the classroom and says, hey, there's no school tomorrow, it's a snow day. Well, is that a good source? Do you believe that student? What if it's the class clown? What if it's Bashir? He was the class clown. What if it's Bashir? Well, what if it's Simon? Simon was the student council president, right? So they automatically know that one of them is going to be more valid than the other. But for all of them, you might say, well, is that true? I'm going to look it up on the BPS website. Or we're going to send somebody down to ask the principal, right? It's the students already know, they have a good sense in their brain about what's good information, bad information, or information that's worth following up. Like, okay, it's worth it to check out this information further. Okay, so is Twitter a good source? Well, it depends on what your question is. If your question is about history, then maybe not. Maybe it's not a good source. But if you are a marketer interested in the current trends, and let's say you have to give a report to your boss on a multi-million-dollar account of why should we invest in Nike shoes right now, or what's the hot new colors coming out for springtime, then yeah, you might be interested in what Twitter is saying. You might be interested to take information from there and make your marketing campaign. So it's all this to say, I think we need to get away from thinking of research in the classroom as a you read a report and you give me the factual information. There are other more useful ways of doing research. For instance, these are ones that automatically students will take a lot of time to figure out if it's the right answer or not. What shoes should I buy? What house? These are sort of grown-up examples, but there are kid ones too. You know, what college should I go to? Right? So these are really what we're preparing our students for, is to look at lots of different information sources and synthesize an actionable response, something that they can take action on. So let me just clarify that this part is about a little bit about my personal opinion about how research is done. But oftentimes, I don't know about you, but in high school, you might have been asked to do a research paper on Guatemala or something, right? You weren't really coming up with any new information, right? When we talk about research in terms of human knowledge, you get a doctorate. If you provide new information to the human race, they give you a doctorate. So this is not something that we're asking our students to do, but there are things that we can ask them to do that rehearse those skills. We just maybe don't call it research. I don't know. That's my thought. We might call it investigation, or making a dossier, or a portfolio, or a literature review, or an executive summary, right? In other words, if we want students to work on the skill of researching, let's not put a stumbling block in front of that by saying, oh no, you can't, you have to write a paper, but it has to be in your own words, but you have to read other sources. And now I understand a lot of you are kindergarten and younger, but I want to give you an idea of what your students may be looking at in the future and working for in the future. So 3 main ideas of research: keeping track of sources. Oh, really? At the preschool level? Wow. Finding, vetting, and determining usefulness. And then determining the questions to deepen understanding and what actions they might take from that. Ask Siri. All right. So you can see that research depends heavily, what's a good source depends heavily upon what your question is, and that you can have students rehearsing good research skills without having to you know, do the painstaking work of making them write long-winded or very formal types of papers. Okay. Now, let me see if can I share my screen with you? So there's a couple slides I'm skipping over because I don't think they're good for this format, and they may not even be helpful to you. But if you can, I'll give you a couple of examples of things that people have done for research. Okay. So if you're dealing with really young students, I'll just start with the really youngest students. Let's say you're talking about preschool. Even if you just develop language in that whenever you're presenting information to your students, you also mention where it came from, that helps students understand that all information doesn't just appear, but that it comes from somewhere. Also, making sure that if you present information in class, that you may present different types of that information, like maybe through video, through a book, through a picture book, through audio, and that you help them to think about it in terms of what actionable steps they can take. As they grow a little older, you might have them doing their own searches, and you can one of the most helpful things that people find is to make a Google custom search. And how do I share my screen? Because I think it would be helpful if I just showed you real quick I don't know. I did it before. No. Oh, you share. Okay, I'm sharing my desktop. Can you see? Yeah, Kittle is a good one. Can everybody see my mouse moving around? Yeah, thank you for nodding. If I make a new window, you see that new window? Okay, so I'm just going to take you on a brief tour of some Google stuff. Custom search engine, CSE.com allows you to build your own custom search engine. I click over here and I click on new search engine. I'm going to call this one name of the search engine. I'm going to call it frogs. And I'm going to have it search National Geographic for kids. So I go here and I just copy and paste Nat Geo Kids into my custom search engine. And let's say I also want to do, I don't know, who else does lots of frog stuff? Animal Planet. Oops, can't spell. Animal Planet. Copy and paste that URL. And then I click create. I can add as many of those as I want. Yay. You can add it to your website. You can view it on the web. Just going to view it. Here it is, Google Custom Search. I type in something like green, and only Animal Planet and National Geographic sites will come up. You can see that there. A lot of Animal Planet. They got probably better or maybe I did it wrong with the, okay, I'm gonna modify. I think I did it wrong. Should have gotten something from National Geographic. Anyway, you get the idea. Oh no, it's checked. It says it's good. All right, so that's one way of using Google to create your own custom search. But it's only going to pull up information from, yeah, see, it's doing all Animal Planet. I'll have to double check. I don't think I did it right. Huh? Okay, so there's Google Custom Search. Let me show you. So this is, most of this is based on web literacy. Right now we're just looking at web literacy. Right. Now here's one for you that may help. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm not keeping an eye on the comments. Oh yeah, it totally needs to calm down. Yeah, Kittle is another way of doing it. They've already sort of vetted it. But if you want to make your own, you can do that. Here I'm looking at frogs. Now here's a couple of things that you may not have known. You can go over to tools and you can sort by time or verbatim. I don't know what that means. Like it only shows the word frog. All right. Let's go over to images. I'm just going to go very quickly through some of the tools that you can use. There's plenty of, and I'll show you actually, there's Google search. I think it's school. It's school. No. I'm sorry. I'll get it to you. It's a link that it's Google's own sort of school on how to do searches. But anyway, here we go. You can sort them by size. You can sort them by color. So if I click on yellow, it brings me images that are mostly yellow. If I bring it on red, it brings me images that are mostly red. I thought that was kind of cool. Black and white frog pictures. There we go. If I click on tools, I can also get usage rights. Now, this is something in the digital age that's new. If an image is copywritten, you should be aware of that. But they also are labeling images now with the ability to reuse them. So if you're allowed to reuse it, like labeled for non-commercial use, reuse, these ones are completely free to use. You can put them anywhere you want as long as you're not making money on them, non-commercial. Labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification. These ones, you can edit, you can color on top of them, you can make them different sizes, you can modify them and reuse them for whatever you want. Not filtered by license, you may get copywritten images, and if you put it on your website, you may be contacted by the photographer to take it down. Unlikely, but it does happen. Another thing is you can click on type if you want a line drawing of frogs, or if you want a graphic interface, a GIF. Oh, I click on the reptilian orgies one. These are GIFs, they move. Okay, so it's a fun way to find a GIF. Let's move over to news. News, the tools you have here, you can sort it by blogs or news. So that's helpful if you are looking for blogs on education or whatever else. You can also sort it by how recent it is. So if you want to do a custom range, you, I know, he is tired. Oh, poor guy. He was up till like 12:30 last night. You can set up a custom range. You want to know what people thought about frogs in 2015, you can do that. Or if you want the most recent or what frog stuff has been posted within the last hour. Only 2 things on the entire web posted in the last hour about frogs. Love it. Okay, so these are just some things that you can use to help refine your search if you're looking for something particular. There's a lot of other things that you can do with them. Let me just show you. Where is it? The Google Help search operators. So these are some things that you can put into your search that will bring you different results. So I think a lot of people know how to search for an exact match. You just put it in quotes. But there's some other ones here, like if you want to search within a range of numbers, for example, camera 50 ... 100, it will bring you information there. If you want to search a specific site like YouTube, put in YouTube right in your URL bar and put in the, what do you call it? colon, and then your search. So you can put, I can just do a quick demonstration there. You put in YouTube colon frogs, and it will bring you YouTube videos about frogs. You don't even have to go to the YouTube website. Yeah, it's somewhat useful. Search social media, put an @ in front of the word. So if I do @frogs, wow, that's failed spectacularly. I just got regular frog stuff. That's disappointing. Yeah. And that was a good source too. That's actual Google. Wait, where'd it go? Yeah, I mean, this is Google search help. All right. Yeah, so that's some good stuff. There was one site. We just found it. Okay. Yeah, this is it. Google Search Education. There are lesson plans about how to search in Google. They have beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And they have even live trainings that you can attend if you'd like to learn to use Google better. Getting to know Google Search for Education. And there are Google challenges, Google a Day challenges. You put your students' research skills to the test with these trivia challenges. So like one of the most famous photos of the 20th century is, I'll give you a little Google Slides to present it. One of the most famous photos of the 20th century was taken at a memorial service for victims of La Cobra. On the original print, what's stamped in the lower left corner? Oh, what a challenge. I don't know how to find that. Okay. I don't know, Leah. I think they're probably start using it pretty young. I don't know. Okay, so those are some tips and tricks about web literacy. This video here, if you're following along with your slides, talks about the OPVL method, and that's a way of vetting information. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this class, but I do recommend watching that to help you understand how people think about determining what's a good or useful source or not useful source. Essentially, you ask 4 questions. The last 2 are V and L, that is value and limitation. What can this source tell us about our question, and what can the source not tell us about the question? So I think the example in the video is Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It can tell you how Lincoln thought about the country at the time, but it doesn't tell you how the Southern people thought about the country at the time, right? So it's somewhat very simple, but you can apply that in a wide range of of sites like Twitter versus encyclopediabritannica.com or something like that. All right, I think this is the last thing I'm going to show you is for your own benefit. You may not have students do this, but you might. Is if you are doing research, I do encourage my students to start at Wikipedia, not necessarily because it's a good source, but because it's a great overview. And then also at the end of the article, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it has references. And so you can click on any of these references and it will bring you to a much more reliable source. So it's kind of like a backdoor of finding all the sources on a topic. If you are trying to do a report on the French Revolution or something, and you don't want to start from scratch looking for all of the French Revolution resources, they will be on Wikipedia, all just ready for you to view. French Revolution, there you go. And this is a good thing too, is that at the beginning, it gives you a table of contents, or it gives you an outline of the whole thing. So you get a good overview of what you might be looking for or looking at. And then down at the bottom, it has see alsos, it has notes, and it has references. It has further reading, other places you can go to find out information. So that's just a real quick and easy way of digging deeper into any topic that you're interested in quickly. All right, and since you're all being so good, I'll show you this one last trick that I really like. Let's say you are trying to research something obscure like no theater. All right, you can also, I like putting syllabus and .pdf in the search bar. If you put syllabus and .pdf in the search bar, a lot of times you end up with syllabus of an educator somewhere who is trying to teach this subject. So if you can open up their syllabus, you may find a lot of resources already there for you. So you don't have to go searching around for them. And they may even have some custom ones, like this, Supplemental Online Lecture of No and Shamanism. Never would have found that, not in a million years of Google searching. They also have books that you could go to the library that are, you already know that it's a place to start. I'm not saying, don't do your own research, but if somebody else has started for you, then absolutely hop on board. Okay, so to recap, your weekly app practical should be about these sort of things. How to find information that is web literacy. And I'm going to expand this for your age groups. Oops, come on, fix my spelling, please. For your age groups to maybe be information literacy. Although information literacy covers validating information as well. Web literacy, information literacy, I'm sure you teach these things already, like how do you use a book, right? There's a table of content, and there's an index. Just sharing these ideas with them. I think most of you in kindergarten are probably already doing that. And how to validate information is also sort of more in a more nuanced way. You can ask the question, is this information going to answer our question? And is it the only source? And does it corroborate or go against what other sources are saying? So again, validating information, that's a whole nother course. Probably it's a bit too much for this course, but even just bringing that language into your classroom of, well, it's not a good or a bad source, but you have to look at who wrote it, why they wrote it, whether it's good for your particular question, and what can't it tell you about your particular question. Lastly, how to cite information or keep track of information. Where's this information come from? How do you track it? And you could do something around formatting. If you were teaching in high school or college, you might start teaching them MLA formatting, things like that. Okay. Yeah. Keeping track of resources, finding, vetting, and the usefulness, and determining what actions you should take. Okay. Any questions? I can unmute you, and/or you may just type the questions. Let's see. Are both due next week? We're gonna have Halloween is coming up. I think so. Let's see. Yeah, just do, even it out for after Halloween. So there's, I'm not going to check whether you've done both of these, but try and get one done for next class. And then, I'm not keeping track of when you've done it or not. I do ask you to read each other's blogs. So if you have something on there, but honestly, even it doesn't have to be done for somebody to read it and give you helpful feedback. Just by the time that we're back from Halloween, I think there's this week, next week, and then Halloween. So that's 3 weeks. You're going to get another assignment next week, but then you won't have anything over Halloween. You'll have no assignments over Halloween week. So by the time Halloween week comes back, have all 3 of those done. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, what do you mean all three? The scribers, the researchers, and what's the other one?
Oh, the one for next week?
We'll go over it next week.
Yeah, we'll go over it next week, but I think I think we start with assessment. I think we're going to do assessment next week. We'll go over it next week, Don. Coletto. We'll go over it next week. Just worry about scribers and researchers for now. I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, Global Citizen. What am I talking about? Global Citizen is next week. We have one more chapter of the book, Global Citizen. I'll type it in here, Global Citizen. So by the time the 8th of November comes around,
3 WAPs.
yeah, have those 3 done. That's, so pick whichever one you think you want to work on between now and next week, etc. Do you have a fire? Does somebody have fire going on there?
I think it's me. I only have candles.
Yeah, a candle. Oh, so warm and cozy.
Actually, it's freezing and dark.
Freezing and dark.
Freezing and dark, and
You
I'm
don't have
stealing
power?
someone's. No,
Oh, wow.
it won't be back till Saturday.
Wow. So you're browsing the internet like the pioneers did.
Like
in the dark with the oil lamp.
Wait, so just so I understand, we're gonna blog an application for scribers, blog an application for research, and read the chapter on global citizens?
Yep, and comment on each other's blog, Student Says Tutorial.
Okay.
But I'm gonna, you know, how do I? Just pick one of them to do for next week. How about that? And then over the week after Halloween, you can catch up with whatever you need to catch up with.
that sounds great.
There will be no assignments over the Halloween week. Yeah.
Okay.
Repeat that.
How many comments do we make?
Oh, good question.
5, you said?
Oh, 5, I meant 5.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have to see how my computer reacts to blog replies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll try again. I don't know if I had to reboot it or what. I don't know, but I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, do your best.
Okay.
But also, you know, we can go over it in class next week.
Okay. I did email you a Google Doc with my replies, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, you should have that.
Good. Okay. Good.
My blog link isn't listed.
Oh.
Like on the RFP.
Email it to me real quick.
Okay.
I'll put this on the website. Do next week is comment on 5 blogs. Do a weekly app practical for scribing or research. And 3, read the chapter in Alan November about Global Citizen.
Okay.
You can go. I can leave, or I'm going to be done anyway. Okay.
Last, oh no, why do I keep saying last? I said last like 6 times. Okay, researchers, you may not find an app for it, or you may not find one app for it. You're welcome to use a website, an application, or just a way of integrating the concepts of research into your classroom. It doesn't have to be computerized, because I understand a lot of you are at the very younger grades, very younger grades. And so if you don't want to use technology or can't, think about how to integrate these concepts into your classroom. Great blogs to check out are the Montessori blogs, because they don't use technology, and see what they did with research, or any of the kindergarten blogs and what they did with research. Okay, you are welcome to hang out here. I'll answer any questions for the next 10 or 15 minutes if you want to start working on that. Otherwise, you are on your own for next class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Have a good night.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night. Bye. Good night. Hi, Skeleton.
Can I turn this on? Can I turn this
Yeah, hold on.
No, do I just exit? Ah.
Why won't it let me?
All right, Mercedes, thank you. Yep. Sorry it somehow went to your Gordon one. You're welcome.